everyone. This is my presentation for my personal learning project. I have spent my time to make this informational video on Betta splendens. I chose this because I wanted to learn how to make an infomercial and also how to build my own tank for this fish, as I've been wanting one for a while. It's upsetting to see how poorly treated these fish often are in captivity, so I wanted to show how to properly keep them in hopes that more people will be responsible and do research before buying an animal. Thank you and welcome to my infomercial. Betta splendens, commonly known as the betta fish or the Siamese fighting fish, is a carnivorous freshwater fish which is native to Southeast Asia, mainly in countries such as Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and Cambodia in shallow bodies of water like rice paddies, slow-moving streams, stagnant ponds, and marshes. They typically live around 2 to 5 years in captivity while taken care of, and they normally grow to 2.4 to 3.1 inches as adults. There are lots of different tail types for Betta splendens. This includes the veil tail, the crown tail, the half moon, the Dumbo or elephant, the rose tail, the over half moon, or also known as the super delta tail, the feather tail, the placat, the half moon placat, the double tail, the delta tail, the half sun or comb tail, and the spade tail. Betta fish also come in many colors. Some of the more popular ones are red, blue, yellow, black, white, orange, gold, purple, green, candy, Nemo, cellophane, and metallic. Some of the different pattern types that a betta can have include solid, marbled, Dalmatian, butterfly, dragon scale, although I don't exactly recommend getting one of those as they are prone to diamond eye and tumors, full mask, koi, bicolor, and grizzled. Now, what water parameters do you need for a betta? First, the temperature. Betta fish are tropical fish and require warmer waters from 75 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit, which in Celsius is 23.8 to 27.2 degrees. This requires a heater. Onto ammonia and nitrites. Ammonia is deadly and will kill your fish as it is the #1 killer of fish. Nitrites can cause brown blood disease, which you also do not want. So you want 0 ppm of both nitrites and ammonia, thus meaning you have none in your tank. Next are nitrates. They aren't too bad, but you don't want too many as this will cause lots of algae, which is firstly annoying as it makes the tank green, and secondly it deprives the tank of oxygen, so you must make sure you keep them under 20 ppm. Now for the GH. This stands for general hardness. It's typically measured on a scale of 0 to 30 dGH, which means degrees of GH. It's measured also from 0 to 530 ppm. 0 is the softest water and 30 is hard water. For Betta splendens, you want around 3 to 4 dGH, which is 50 to 66.7 ppm. Next is the KH. This stands for carbonate hardness. It measures the amount of carbonates and bicarbonates in the water. The KH helps neutralize acids, which keeps your pH relatively stable. pH crashes can cause health issues in your fish, so KH is important. For betta fish, you typically want around 3 to 5 DKH, which is 53.6 to 89.4 ppm. pH means the power of hydrogen, and it tells you how acidic or alkaline the water is. It's measured on a scale of 0 to 14, 0 being the most acidic, 14 being the most alkaline, and 7 is the neutral. With betta fish, you want a relatively neutral pH of around 6.5 to 7.5. Now, let's look at some great betta tank examples. As you may notice, all these tanks are longer than they are tall, as the fish will swim horizontally. These tanks are also not small, none of them are below 5 gallons. which is the bare minimum for betta fish. The tanks also allow the fish lots of space to swim, and they have plants and rocks and places for the fish to hide. Now, let's look at some bad betta tank examples and explain why they are bad. First off, these tanks are all way too small. Ammonia will build up very fast, and the fish in these tanks can barely move. Also, lots of them have no lids. This is a problem because betta fish are known for jumping, and they can easily jump out of their tanks. Also, bowls are always bad, as they limit oxygen access for your fish. Also, these ones are hanging in the air, which I don't feel like I have to explain why that's unsafe, but I guess I do. It can fall, and your fish will die. The glass will shatter, and the water will spill, and the fish will likely suffocate or already get stabbed by glass. So don't do that. And now this tank, obviously it's too small, doesn't have lids, but the main problem is the fact that you're supposed to have multiple. And betta fish are, Siamese fighting fish, known for fighting each other, and they're also known for jumping, and these tanks don't have lids. So they will likely see each other already. Even if the tanks had lids, they'd be aggressive and constantly stressed because they'd see each other all the time. But what's even worse is since they don't have lids, they can simply jump out into the other tanks and they will fight to the death. They will not just peacefully coexist. They will kill each other. And you obviously don't want that. They could also, jump out, fall on the floor, and then they'd be dead. So please, if you see any tanks that look like any of these, don't even think about it. It's not a good idea. It's not worth it. It makes your fish seem like it's a decoration, which it isn't. Also, these tanks just look ugly, in my opinion. Even if you look past all of the terrible things, they don't even look good either. They aren't good for the fish. They don't look good. Nothing is good about this. So don't do them. Use the other tanks. Setting up a proper tank is likely the most important step to getting a fish, because if your tank isn't suitable for your fish, it will greatly shorten its lifespan. So here is my step-by-step tutorial on how to set up your own betta tank. The first step is to get the right tank. I'm using a 20-gallon, as that is the size I would recommend for a betta. Bare minimum, I would go with around 5 to 10, but 10 is better. Next, clean the tank. Do this by scrubbing it with a scrubber brush and tap water. You should also make sure that you have your items: a lid, a sponge filter, a heater, a light, rocks of your choice. I chose dragonstone because it is easy to fit plants into, but you can really use whatever you'd like. Your substrate, aquarium safe glue, API quick start, API leaf zone, any other decorations, and plants. Any substrate you buy will have instructions on the back on how to wash it. Now it's time to put it in the enclosure. Pour it in and start moving it around with your hands. Shape it however you'd like. Next, we put the rocks in the tank. Feel free to arrange them however you'd like. Also, you can also use any piece of wood. We use spider wood, but whatever you'd like, as long as it's clean. We placed the sponge filter in the tank and also placed our heater in the tank. The heater will have instructions in the box it's in or on the box itself. We recommend to turn it to 76 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 24 degrees Celsius. Now to get the water ready for when we put it in the tank. We're putting the water in a 4-gallon bucket. Read the instructions on your tap water conditioner and pour accordingly. The instructions in the back will tell you how much to pour. Now, how to use the plants. The Anubias nana has horizontal roots on the bottom. So take your super glue and place it on the rock. You should wear gloves because that is much safer than what we were doing. Then hold the plant down. Make sure the roots are still horizontal on the glue and wait for 20 seconds for it to dry. Java ferns are basically the same. The only difference is that they don't grow horizontally. But you still need to take the bottom part of the plant and press it into the glue. Once you've decided where you want all your plants, quickly pour the water into your hand, rocks in the tank, or on a plastic bag to stop it from disrupting the substrate as much. We used 5 4-gallon buckets to fill the tank. Now that we've done that, let's add API Quick Start. This contains helpful bacteria which will help speed up the cycling process, but still don't add the fish for a few weeks. For a 20-gallon tank, you should use around 10 milliliters of API Quick Start. There is a measuring thing on the cap, so just fill the whole cap up and pour it into the tank. You should also now set up your lights and put your lid on. And again, it will have instructions on the back. It depends what light you get. This is the one that we got. But anything similar should work. I'd also recommend using Aqueon Pure, which contains live beneficial bacteria and enzymes. This will help with the cycling process. You can't overdose it, and if you're using for a new tank, I'd recommend having the API Quick Start and then using 4 of these. Then, I decided to do a water test. Here is how you do one. First, take your glass tube and fill it with water. Then what you're going to do is, this is a test for ammonia, so you're going to get your ammonia bottle number 1 and your ammonia bottle number 2. You are going to put 8 drops of the ammonia number 1 in there and make sure that you hold it vertically, as this will make sure that your drops are even. Then put in 8 drops of the ammonia 2. Then put your cap on and shake it really well for 5 seconds. Now you're going to leave it alone for about 5 minutes and the color should show. Now for the nitrites, it's about the same, just different amounts of drops. The kit comes with instructions, so you don't have to worry about it. Just read the instructions and do the test accordingly. We're going to be repeating this process every so often to help set up the tank. The nitrogen cycle, also called the cycling process, is one of the most important things about keeping fish and having a proper tank. Your tank needs to cycle because your fish will not live if it's put in. Basically, how the nitrogen cycle works is when you first set up a new tank, it'll have a spike of ammonia. It will target your fish's gills and scales and basically burn them. So it is extremely deadly and you don't want any. This is why you need beneficial bacteria. Now you can let this happen naturally, but it takes a lot longer. So I used API Quick Start, but there's also various different products that you can also use. But what happens in the tank is the nitrifying bacteria, or also known as beneficial bacteria, will build up on surfaces such as rocks or plants or wood or any decorations you have or your filter or your heater. This is also why sponge filters are very good, as they're great places for beneficial bacteria to grow. The beneficial bacteria will slowly attack the ammonia in the tank and will break it down into nitrites. So eventually, the beneficial bacteria will break down the nitrites as well and turn them into nitrates, which is where the beneficial bacteria stops helping. The beneficial bacteria won't break down the nitrates. You have to do that yourself with regular water changes. Doing water changes for your tank is a very important step to remember, because if you fail to perform regular water changes, your fish will die. For a 20-gallon tank with only one fish, you should do a 10 to 20% water change once a week. This means you should take out 2 to 4 gallons per week. But you shouldn't do any water changes during cycling, as this just drags out the process and makes it take way longer. So, how do you do a water change? First, make sure you have your supplies. You will need 2 large buckets. They should be at least 5 gallons, and it's best if they are labeled in gallons with measurements. This way you can know for sure how much water you're putting in. Next, you're going to need a siphon or gravel vacuum. The API Freshwater Master Kit and the API GH and KH Test are good testing kits, and API Tap Water Conditioner. First, fill up one of the buckets with new water, 2 to 4 gallons depending on what percentage you want to do. Dechlorinate it, and since your tank is heating, you're going to need to heat your new water. Either that or you'll have to use warmer water from the tap, but make sure you use a thermometer. This is important because it makes sure that the water is around the same temperature as in your tank, because you don't want to shock your fish. Also, check the water parameters in the bucket to make sure they aren't that different, as again, water parameter shock is a good way to kill your fish. Now that you're sure your new water is right, you must prepare your tank. This involves turning off any piece of equipment that may be exposed to air. Now, clean your tank. This involves scraping the glass with an algae scraper and removing or trimming dead leaves on plants, or just trimming them if they are getting too tall or too big for your liking. Now it's time to siphon out the old tank water into your bucket. Place your siphon in the tank and the other end in the bucket. Keep your siphon near the substrate, as this is where the most ammonia is formed. Vacuum through your substrate and try to get out as much as possible of fish waste, and stop when you've taken out around 20 to 10% of the water. Now for the final step. Put your siphon in the tank and bucket again, but this time make sure it takes the bucket water into the tank. This will make a slow introduction of your new dechlorinated tank water. Once all the water is in the tank, turn on any equipment that you may have turned off, and make sure to monitor your tank's water parameters after every couple of days. Before you get your Betta, make sure you have your checklist checked out. Now that you have all the necessary equipment, let's get your Betta fish. It's very important to buy a healthy Betta fish. And often, Betta fish at chain pet stores aren't very healthy. They're kept in small cups that quickly fill with ammonia, and you often see them dead in their cups. Some non-chain pet stores have Betta fish in better conditions, so you're less likely to find dead or sick ones, but there are not many good pet stores. So here are some tips so you can make sure that the fish you take home is healthy. First, check if the fish is reacting well. An active, healthy fish should be curious. Next, make sure the fish has clear and bright eyes. Its fins should be bright, whole, and full. They shouldn't look clamped, and they shouldn't have any rips, unless it's a crowntail or suntail. Their scales should be bright and smooth, with no lumps or abrasions, and make sure that there isn't any swelling around the stomach. There are also various different places to buy your fish online. Now, it is very important you acclimate your Betta. This is because if you simply place your fish into the tank, it'll likely go into temperature shock. The temperature and other water parameters of your tank are definitely different to the water in the cup or the bag. Here is how to do a water switch acclimation. First, make sure your tank water parameters are right for your fish. Then, take off the lid of the transfer cup or open the transferred bag. Grab a bucket and slowly try and pour out as much water as possible without dropping the fish or leaving it with no water. Make sure there is just enough to cover it. Make sure to either keep the lights low if that's possible for your type of light, or turn it off. This will help reduce your fish's stress. If the Betta came in a cup, allow the cup to float inside the tank. If it's in a bag, roll open the top of the bag to create an edge. This will make sure it doesn't tip over. Now, add half a cup of tank water every 15 minutes. Make sure to pour it in the cup or bag very slowly. This will slowly introduce the fish to the new water parameters. This should take around 60 minutes. Then, slowly tilt the cup or bag into the tank and let the fish into its new tank. Make sure to monitor it closely to make sure that it isn't sick, because again, the tank water or the little cup water in the cup or bag might not be so clean. So make sure to monitor the water parameters and make sure that there isn't any ammonia, and make sure that the fish is not sick, as it can be very stressed when put in a new tank. Here is a list of various different feeding tips for betta fish. In conclusion, while betta fish may seem like easy pets, and even though they're beginner fish, they're still difficult to keep and prepare for. So please make sure you are absolutely ready for them. They can also be quite costly. Not necessarily the fish itself, but the tank, the rocks, the heater, the filter, the lid, the light, and all the food you'll need can make it pretty costly. Even if you really want a betta, if you cannot afford to give them a bare minimum of 10 gallons with a heater, a filter, a variety of foods, a light, a lid, and various different plants and decorations to keep them happy, you shouldn't get a betta. But if you can get them a good home and good food, then having one of these fish is a joy, as they are beautiful and energetic. Feel free to take the shortened care guides and read them at home. Hope you enjoyed the video and have a nice day.